Going into the 2014 Finals, LeBron James clearly established himself as the best player in the world, coming off back-to-back championships, Finals MVPs, while also collecting back-to-back regular season MVPs. But despite the Heat having the best player in the world, San Antonio would still win the Finals by a record margin. And at the time, they had the best defense in the NBA with the young and hungry Kawhi Leonard. In this video, we're going to focus on how exactly the Spurs went about guarding a prime LeBron James, and what did and didn't work throughout this series. Now, while the Spurs decisively sent the Heat home in 5 games, they still had a hard time bottling up LeBron, where he averaged an efficient 28 points per game. And what made this version of him so hard to guard was that during this time, LeBron was starting to establish himself as a legit outside shooter.
Fires away and hits the three.
During this postseason, James shot 40% on all his looks from behind the line, and most of these shots were both off the dribble and really difficult. First, out of pick and roll, James had no problem rising up going both right and left. If San Antonio played him soft or tried to cheat under, he was quickly picking up and looking to fire. And shots like this may seem pretty straightforward from a bird's eye view, but LeBron rising up for jumpers efficiently going both ways was a big deal. Look how Tim Duncan here is dropped back well below the yard, and James is going to get into this automatic one dribble pull-up. This shot here was tough, where the Spurs are going to throw out a hard hedge with one of their guards, but LeBron is going to bring the ball behind to his left hand to then organize his feet and drain this bomb. And James could also generate these outside looks in isolation. He didn't exactly have the same bag of step backs that we see right now, specifically the FU3, but he could still leverage that driving threat to push the defense back to then again gather and fire. He's playing with a head of steam here in semi-transition, and he gets the defense leaning back, leaving him plenty of space to organize his feet and elevate.
The perimeter, another three. That's good. LeBron.
This play kind of reminds me of LA LeBron, where he's working off the screen to his left, but with his momentum pulling him across, he has the rhythm to gather for this leaning three. Now that shot making for LeBron also carried over to his mid-range game. Off the catch, he was very effective in facing up and finding windows to elevate. I like how he creates space here by pivoting across to then bring it back and instantly get it to his set point to fire. Sometimes the simplest moves can be the most effective. He's again facing up here against Kawhi Leonard, and watch him just simply jab and drop those shoulders to then again bring that foot back and drift into a fadeaway. Off the bounce, James also had the footwork and balance to attack into open space, to then stop and turn out for more fadeaways. And a very important detail is that LeBron really favored elevating going left. Notice how he's going to come off the screen to his right, to then bring it back to his left hand to rise up. So the addition of LeBron's 3-point and mid-range scoring was the final thing that made him pretty much unguardable with the ball. In the past, he for sure could get hot for a few stretches, but him establishing himself as a consistent shot maker left the defense with no good answers on how to guard him. Now, still in his 20s, James was obviously a handful to deal with when attacking the basket. If he got a head of steam out on the open floor, there was simply no chance of stopping him without fouling. Boris Diaw here initially plays really good defense by sliding and cutting off LeBron's initial burst, but from this spot, James can still pick up and step through contact. On top of that ability to absorb bumps, James also had ridiculous body control, being able to pick up and spin through bodies, to then keep himself on balance while he elevates towards the basket. Look here how Kawhi is bracing for contact as James pushes the ball across to his left, which again sets up that spin. Now in the half court, a majority of the Heat's offense stemmed from LeBron playing in isolation. Even with their best defenders guarding him, that blend of strength, quickness, and power made him a really tough one-on-one matchup. And like we went over in a previous video, LeBron at this point of his career had already developed a pretty effective post game. So on top of using that speed to get blow-bys, he can also use that strength to bump his man down, creating these windows for jump hooks or push shots. So as a one-on-one player, James pretty much checked all the boxes. He was consistently knocking down looks both from 3 and in the mid-range. He had ridiculous speed and strength when attacking off the dribble, plus he also had that post game in his back pocket. And that top tier isolation scoring was pretty much the foundation for the Heat's offense. Everything for them came down to forcing switches and giving him matchups to attack. And if the Spurs left any of their bigs on an island, it was pretty much a guaranteed bucket. But the Spurs throughout this series made it a point to limit the space and opportunities that LeBron had to play one-on-one. The first thing they did was shrink the floor with heavy help defense. Look how Parker here is going to slide across the nail before James even attacks below the arc, and this preemptively eliminates the isolation. James again here forces another switch, but look how the Spurs both sit heavy in gap, plus send additional help from the weak side, and there's just simply no space for him to work with here. Now obviously if you're sending multiple bodies at LeBron, he for sure has the passing chops to pick you apart and force scrambles. But for the most part, San Antonio was pretty in sync with the rotations. Obviously they weren't perfect throughout the course of the series, but they did enough to plug up most of their breakdowns. And besides the Oklahoma City Thunder this past season and Golden State, I think this is the most in-sync defense we've seen over the past 20 years. Like we went over, a big part of San Antonio's game plan was to shrink the floor with gap and weak side help, to either force LeBron into tougher looks or turn him into a passer. But when the Spurs threw multiple bodies towards the ball, the second side defense was always ready to rotate and cover the next pass. Look how the Spurs here have 4 defenders slide down towards the paint, and they're able to snag this kick out past the corner. On this play, they're going to initially double LeBron when he catches. But look how both Bonner and Parker on the weak side put themselves in position to cover these 3 Heat players, and they're able to get matched up and rotate on this kick out pass. And the Spurs were also very effective in mixing up all their coverages. Look how Ginobili is rotating across as if he's looking to double, to then rotate back towards the weak side. So the Spurs being able to double the ball, mix up their looks and always rotate on the weak side, completely took away the Heat's ability to use LeBron on the block as a scorer or passing hub. And this low-key exposed the lack of second side attackers in Miami's roster. D-Wade was going through multiple injuries, and the other guys didn't really have the ball skills to create offense off these closeouts. Now, one adjustment the Heat tried to make was to instead put James in pick and roll on the perimeter, and because they could space the floor with shooters, this did lead to some good offense. If James got 2 on the ball, it was easy for him to create good open catch and shoot threes. Plus that spacing made the lane open for more off-ball cutting. But possessions like this were few and far between, and the Spurs team concepts really exposed the limitations in the Heat's personnel. Now, guarding LeBron with all 5 players isn't really a new concept, and at this point we've already seen it for the better part of a decade. But what also separated San Antonio was that they had a guy who could also match up with LeBron physically, and that was Kawhi Leonard. Again, what's always made LeBron pretty much impossible to guard was that blend of strength and speed. But a young and injury-free Leonard could match up with all those physical attributes. He could keep himself in front of these quick bursts, plus having the strength to absorb contact in the paint. Look how LeBron is going to lower his shoulder and attack across the lane, but Leonard had the strength to hold his ground, pushing him out into a tougher finish. And then on top of that stability in the lane, Kawhi also had the foot speed to step out and meet James on the perimeter. On this play, he's stepping out and pressuring James right at the 3-point line. And as he looks to charge downhill, Kawhi can keep himself squared up and wall off the stride without fouling. And then even if LeBron was able to beat Leonard and get him on his hip, that physicality and length still made finishing really difficult. James here is going to refuse this screen by crossing into his left, but even with a clear angle to score, Kawhi's presence still funnels him into a miss. So naturally, if your best player is having a hard time creating offense with a specific matchup, the obvious thing to do is to free him up with a ball screen. But the issue was Leonard was also very good at navigating through these actions by either pressing over and heading off LeBron's drive or darting under to keep himself in front. The Spurs here are going to have Tony Parker hard hedge to push LeBron back, giving Kawhi plenty of time and space to work his way back in front. And again, like we saw with this isolation defense, what really separated Leonard was his ability to get out and pressure the ball, which made it much more difficult for James to set up and come off these different actions. The Heat here are trying to free him up with a ball screen in early offense. But look how Leonard from the logo is going to push him away from this pick, forcing him into a tough contested step back 3. And again, like we saw, because Leonard had the foot speed and strength to keep LeBron in front, this led to him settling for jumpers or tougher looks from over the top. And while James did take a big leap as a shooter this season, this part of his game was still not his fastball. However, even this version of Kawhi wasn't bulletproof against James. LeBron was still able to turn the corner and bowl his way into fouls, or catch Kawhi with his hand in the cookie jar. But at the same time, Kawhi for sure made James work every single possession, and his ability to hold his own in isolation while blowing up a majority of the Heat's screening actions pretty much cut the head off the snake. Now, it's also important to note that Leonard also had a major impact when defending off the ball. First, he had really good awareness by always being early on his rotations, and when sliding over in help, he was also a really underrated rim protector. Look how he's going to leave LeBron in the corner and extend up to eliminate this D-Wade finish. And this was around the time where the nickname The Claw was coming to life. So if the ball was exposed anywhere close to his frame, it was pretty much a guaranteed steal. So the combination of the Spurs' elite team and one-on-one defense, I think gave LeBron some of the biggest problems we've ever seen throughout any postseason. But again, I also think this Miami team was missing a lot. When D-Wade was no longer a reliable second option or second side attacker, their offense did become pretty one-dimensional. And like we see over and over again, the better team will always beat the best player. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what the kids should break down next. The kids are here.